I am 89 years old. When people hear that number, they usually smile politely and say things like, "Wow, you've lived a long life." And yes, I have. I have seen wars come and go. I have watched cities change. I have held newborn babies who are now grandparents themselves. I have celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, graduations, and weddings. But age teaches you something that nobody talks about. The greatest pain in old age is not physical pain. It is not the aching knees. It is not the slower steps. It is not even the loneliness. The deepest pain comes when the people you sacrificed everything for slowly stop respecting you. The heartbreaking truth is that disrespect rarely arrives all at once. It comes quietly. It slips into conversations. It hides behind small actions. It appears in little moments that seem harmless at first. Then one day, you wake up and realize something has changed. The people who once looked up to you no longer listen to you. The people who once sought your advice now ignore your words. The people you raised, protected, and loved begin treating you as if your presence no longer matters. I know this because I lived it. A few years ago, I sat at a large family gathering. My children were there. My grandchildren were there. The house was full of laughter. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But something happened that day. Something small. Something many people would probably overlook. I began telling a story. It was a story about a difficult time in my life when I was young. I had barely spoken 2 sentences when someone interrupted me. Then another person started talking. Soon everyone was focused on something else. No one even noticed I had stopped speaking. I sat there quietly. Nobody asked me to continue. Nobody said, "Grandpa, what happened next?" Nobody seemed interested. For the first time in my life, I felt invisible. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever been surrounded by family and still felt completely alone? If you have, then today's message is for you. Because there are signs that your family may be losing respect for you. And the sooner you recognize these signs, the sooner you can protect your dignity, your confidence, and your peace of mind. Let's begin with the first sign. Sign number 1, they constantly interrupt you or ignore what you say. At first, this may seem small. You might think they're busy. You might tell yourself, young people have a lot on their minds. And sometimes that's true. But there is a difference between being distracted and being disrespectful. Respect is shown through attention. When people respect you, they listen. They make eye contact. They allow you to finish your thoughts. They value your words. When respect disappears, listening often disappears first. I remember my friend Harold. Harold was 91 years old. He had spent 40 years working as an engineer. He built bridges. He solved complex problems. People admired him. His family was proud of him. But after retirement, something changed. One afternoon, Harold invited me to lunch. We sat together for nearly 2 hours. At one point, he became very quiet. Then he told me something that broke my heart. He said, "I don't think my family hears me anymore." I asked him what he meant. He explained that whenever he spoke during family dinners, someone would interrupt. If he offered advice, nobody responded. If he shared a memory, people immediately changed the subject. At first, he thought he was imagining it. Then he started paying attention, and he realized it happened almost every time. His voice had become background noise. Imagine that. A man who spent decades solving problems and supporting his family suddenly felt like his words had no value. The truth is simple. When people repeatedly interrupt you, they are sending a message. Maybe they don't realize it. Maybe they aren't doing it intentionally. But the message is still there. They are saying that what they want to say is more important than what you have to say. That hurts, especially when it comes from the people you love most. One of the greatest needs every human being has is the need to feel heard, not admired, not praised, simply heard. As we grow older, that need becomes even stronger. Because so much of our identity is connected to our stories, experiences, and wisdom. When family members stop listening, it can feel as though pieces of your life are being erased. You begin questioning yourself. You start speaking less. You become quieter. Eventually, you stop sharing altogether, and that is dangerous, because silence can slowly become isolation. I met a woman named Eleanor in a senior community several years ago. She told me that she used to love family gatherings. She loved telling stories about her childhood. She loved sharing memories. She loved making people laugh. Then, little by little, things changed. Her grandchildren spent every visit staring at their phones. Her children seemed distracted. Nobody asked questions anymore. Nobody seemed interested. Eventually, Eleanor stopped talking, not because she had nothing to say, but because she believed nobody cared. One day her daughter asked, "Mom, why are you always so quiet now?" Eleanor's answer was heartbreaking. She said, "Because nobody listens." The room fell silent. For the first time, her family understood how deeply their behavior had affected her. Sometimes people don't realize the damage they're causing. Sometimes they become so busy that they stop paying attention. But that doesn't make the pain any less real. If this is happening in your life, I want you to remember something. Your experiences matter. Your memories matter. Your voice matters. The wisdom you have earned through decades of living has value. Never allow anyone to convince you otherwise. You survived challenges that younger generations can barely imagine. You learned lessons through sacrifice, perseverance, heartbreak, and hard work. Those lessons deserve respect. If your family constantly interrupts you or ignores what you say, don't immediately assume something is wrong with you. The problem may not be your words. The problem may be their attention. And that distinction is important, because many older adults begin blaming themselves. They think they talk too much. They think they are boring. They think nobody cares. But often the truth is much simpler. People have become distracted. They have forgotten the importance of listening. And unfortunately, that lack of listening can become a sign that respect is fading. As we continue this journey together, you'll discover 4 more warning signs that many seniors overlook until the damage has already been done. Some of these signs are subtle, some are painful, and one of them may completely change how you view your family relationships. If today's message touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Think about the last few family conversations you've had. Did people truly listen? Did they value your words, or did you feel invisible? Be honest with yourself, because recognizing the problem is always the first step toward protecting your dignity. And after 89 years of life, I've learned one important truth. You cannot force people to respect you, but you can recognize when respect is disappearing. And once you recognize it, you can decide how you will respond. If sign number 1 made you uncomfortable, sign number 2 may hurt even more. Because this sign doesn't just affect your feelings. It affects your place within the family. As we grow older, many of us expect certain things to change. We understand that younger generations will take on more responsibilities. We know our children will eventually become leaders of their own households. That is natural. That is part of life. But there is a huge difference between allowing younger family members to lead and being completely excluded from decisions that affect you or the family. One shows healthy growth. The other shows a loss of respect. I learned this lesson through a man named Walter. Walter was 87 years old when I met him. For most of his life, he had been the center of his family. Not because he demanded attention, not because he controlled everyone, but because people valued his wisdom. Whenever there was a problem, they called Walter. Whenever there was a major decision, they asked for his advice. Whether it was buying a home, choosing a school, starting a business, or handling family conflicts, Walter's opinion mattered. His family trusted him. Then something changed. Not overnight, not dramatically, slowly, quietly. One day his son sold a piece of family property. Walter didn't learn about it until after the paperwork was complete. Months later, another decision was made regarding family finances. Again, nobody asked him. Then came another decision, and another. Eventually, Walter realized something painful. His family was no longer including him. They informed him after decisions were made, but they never invited him into the conversation beforehand. When he told me this story, his eyes filled with tears. He wasn't upset because he wanted control. He wasn't angry because he needed power. He was hurt because he no longer felt valued. There is a profound difference between being informed and being included. Being informed means someone tells you what happened. Being included means someone believes your thoughts matter. Respect lives in that difference. Many seniors experience this exact situation. A family gathering is planned. Everyone knows about it except them. A major purchase is made. Nobody asks their opinion. A family tradition is changed. Nobody consults them. Even decisions involving their own care, their own home, or their own future are discussed behind closed doors. Then someone arrives and says, "We've already decided." Those 4 words can feel like a punch to the heart. We've already decided. What those words often communicate is this: your input is no longer necessary. For someone who spent decades caring for that family, making sacrifices, solving problems, and providing guidance, hearing that message can be devastating. I remember a woman named Margaret. Margaret was 84. Her children loved her. At least they believed they did. They visited regularly. They brought groceries. They helped around the house. From the outside, everything seemed wonderful, but Margaret carried a secret sadness. One day her children decided she should move into a smaller apartment. Their intentions were good. They worried about her safety. They wanted to help, but they made one critical mistake. They never asked Margaret what she wanted. Instead, they met privately. They discussed options. They created a plan. Then they presented it to her as a finished decision. Margaret listened quietly. When they finished, she smiled politely. But later that night she cried. Not because she hated the idea. Not because she was stubborn. She cried because nobody had asked for her opinion. Nobody had treated her like an adult capable of participating in her own future. Imagine spending 4 years building a life, and then discovering others are making decisions about you without you. That pain is difficult to describe. One of the greatest human needs is autonomy. People want to feel they still have a voice. They want to feel their choices matter. They want to know they are still respected as individuals. Age does not erase those needs. In fact, they often become even more important. Many younger people don't realize this. They assume they are helping. They assume they know what's best. And sometimes they genuinely do have good intentions. But respect requires more than good intentions. Respect requires involvement. Respect requires listening. Respect requires recognizing that wisdom doesn't disappear simply because someone grows older. Think about everything an 80-year-old, 85-year-old, or 90-year-old person has experienced. They have survived economic hardships. They have navigated family crises. They have endured losses. They have adapted to changing times. They have learned lessons through decades of real life. That experience has value. Yet many families unintentionally dismiss it. The modern world moves quickly. Technology changes constantly. Young people often believe newer automatically means better. As a result, they sometimes overlook the wisdom sitting right in front of them. I once heard an elderly gentleman say something I'll never forget. He said, "My family treats me like a photograph." Someone asked what he meant. He smiled sadly and replied, "They keep me around because I belong there, but they never expect me to contribute." What a heartbreaking description. A photograph is present. A photograph is visible. A photograph is remembered. But a photograph has no voice. Many seniors feel exactly that way. Present but unheard. Included physically but excluded emotionally. Seen but not consulted. And over time, this can create deep wounds. The danger is not just the hurt itself. The danger is what happens afterward. When people repeatedly feel excluded, they often begin withdrawing. They stop offering ideas. They stop sharing opinions. They stop participating, not because they don't care, but because they believe nobody wants their input. Little by little, they become silent observers in their own family. That silence can become a lonely place, a very lonely place. The tragedy is that families often don't notice. They mistake silence for agreement. They mistake withdrawal for contentment. They mistake resignation for peace. Meanwhile, the older person is carrying a growing sense of sadness, a feeling that their role has been reduced, a feeling that their value has diminished, a feeling that their voice no longer matters. If you are experiencing this, I want you to remember something important. Your age does not make your perspective irrelevant. Your years do not make your wisdom obsolete. Your experience remains valuable. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be consulted. You deserve to be treated with dignity. Respect is not about controlling every decision. Respect is not about always getting your way. Respect is knowing that people care enough to ask what you think. Respect is knowing your voice still has a place at the table. Respect is feeling like a participant rather than a spectator. And when that participation disappears, it may be a warning sign that respect is fading. Perhaps the most painful part is that many families don't even realize they are doing it. They aren't trying to hurt anyone. They simply become accustomed to making decisions independently. They become focused on efficiency. They become busy. And in that business, they forget something important. The people who once guided them still need to feel valued, still need to feel included, still need to feel respected. Before we move on, take a quiet moment to reflect on your own life. Have important family decisions been made without your knowledge? Do people consult you less than they once did? Do you often hear about plans after they've already been finalized? If so, don't ignore those feelings. Pay attention, because these small moments often reveal larger truths about family relationships. And sadly, the next sign may be even more painful, because it involves something every human being longs for, regardless of age: the need to feel appreciated. There is a special kind of sadness that comes when you begin to realize that the phone only rings when someone wants a favor. Not because they miss you, not because they want to hear your voice, not because they are thinking about you, but because they need something. Maybe they need money. Maybe they need a babysitter. Maybe they need a ride. Maybe they need help solving a problem. Maybe they need access to something only you can provide. At first, you don't notice it. Families help each other. That's normal. Parents help children. Grandparents help grandchildren. Love often expresses itself through service. There is nothing wrong with that. The problem begins when the relationship becomes one-sided. The problem begins when the giving flows in only one direction. The problem begins when people remember you during their emergencies, but forget you during their ordinary days. That is when something deeper may be happening. That is when respect may be fading. I remember a woman named Dorothy. Dorothy was 86 years old. She lived alone after losing her husband. Every morning she sat near her kitchen window with a cup of coffee. And every morning she checked her phone, not because she expected important news, not because she was waiting for a business call. She was hoping one of her children would call, just to say hello, just to ask how she was doing, just to hear her voice. Some days the phone stayed silent. Then suddenly it would ring. Her heart would jump with excitement. She would smile and answer immediately. But after a while, she noticed a pattern. The calls always started warmly. The conversations always sounded friendly. But before long, a request would appear. Someone needed money. Someone needed childcare. Someone needed help. Someone needed a favor. And once the favor was completed, the calls stopped again. Days passed, sometimes weeks, sometimes even longer. Eventually, Dorothy told me something that nearly broke my heart. She said, "I don't know if they miss me or if they miss what I can do for them." Think about that for a moment. Imagine reaching a point in life where you begin questioning whether people value you as a person or simply value your usefulness. That is a painful place to be, because every human being wants to feel loved for who they are. Not for what they provide, not for what they own, not for what they can give, simply for who they are. Many older adults experience this without realizing it. Their family members remain connected. The phone still rings. Visits still happen. Messages still arrive. On the surface, everything appears fine. But if you look closely, the relationship revolves around needs rather than connection. The contact comes when assistance is required. The attention comes when something is needed. The affection appears when there is a benefit involved. Then once the need disappears, so does the communication. That pattern slowly creates emotional exhaustion. I once knew a gentleman named Frank. Frank was 88 years old. For decades, he had been the problem solver in his family. Whenever someone faced a crisis, they called Frank. Whenever someone needed advice, they called Frank. Whenever someone encountered difficulty, they called Frank. He was proud of helping. It gave him purpose. It gave him joy. But one evening he noticed something that changed his perspective. He sat down with a notebook. He looked through several months of phone calls. One by one, he remembered the conversations. Then he asked himself a simple question. How many people called just to see how I was doing? The answer shocked him. Almost none. Most calls involved requests. Most conversations involved problems. Most interactions centered around somebody else's needs. Very few centered around him. For the first time, he realized he had become a resource rather than a relationship. That realization hurt deeply. The truth is that respect involves curiosity. People who respect you care about your thoughts. They care about your feelings. They care about your well-being. They ask questions. They check on you. They want to know how your day is going. Not because they need something, because they care. Respect says, you matter. Disrespect often says, you matter when you're useful. There is a tremendous difference between those two messages. One builds connection. The other creates loneliness. As people age, usefulness often changes. Retirement arrives. Physical strength decreases. Income may become fixed. Opportunities to help in certain ways become limited. And that is when true relationships reveal themselves, because genuine love survives even when usefulness changes. Genuine respect remains even when someone can no longer provide what they once did. A daughter who truly respects her father doesn't call only when she needs money. A grandson who truly respects his grandmother doesn't visit only when he wants something. A son who truly values his mother doesn't remember her only during emergencies. Real respect seeks connection, not convenience. I once met an elderly widow named Ruth. Ruth had 4 children, all successful, all busy, all living their own lives. One afternoon she shared something remarkable with me. She said, I don't need them to visit every day. She smiled softly. I don't even need them to solve my problems. Then her eyes filled with tears. I just want them to remember that I'm still here. Those words stayed with me, because underneath them lies one of the deepest fears many older adults carry. The fear of being forgotten. Not forgotten after death, forgotten while still alive. Imagine sitting in your home day after day, watching the seasons change, watching birthdays come and go, waiting for a call, waiting for a visit, waiting for someone to ask how you're doing, then realizing the only time people reach out is when they need something. That realization can create a profound sense of emptiness. You begin wondering questions that nobody should have to ask. Would they call if they didn't need help? Would they visit if they weren't asking for something? Would they think about me if I had nothing left to offer? These questions hurt because they touch something fundamental. Every person wants to feel valued. Every person wants to feel appreciated. Every person wants to know their presence matters, not their resources, not their abilities, their presence, their existence, their heart, their life, their story. The healthiest family relationships are built on mutual care. People support each other. People help each other. People show up for each other. But the support flows both ways. The concern flows both ways. The appreciation flows both ways. When one person is always giving and everyone else is always taking, something becomes unbalanced. Eventually, resentment appears. Eventually, sadness appears. Eventually, loneliness appears. And sadly, many seniors carry these feelings in silence. They don't want to complain. They don't want to create conflict. They don't want to appear needy, so they keep smiling. They keep helping. They keep answering the phone. Meanwhile, their hearts grow heavier. If this sounds familiar, please understand something important. There is nothing selfish about wanting genuine connection. There is nothing wrong with wanting people to care about your life. There is nothing unreasonable about wanting family members to call simply because they love you. Those desires are not signs of weakness. They are signs of humanity. You deserve relationships that recognize your worth beyond your usefulness. You deserve conversations that aren't attached to requests. You deserve visits that aren't connected to favors. You deserve to feel loved for who you are, not merely for what you can provide. As I've grown older, I've learned a powerful lesson. The people who truly respect you make time for you even when they need nothing. They call without a reason. They visit without an agenda. They ask about your day. They listen to your stories. They remember your birthday. They think about your happiness. Those small actions reveal something beautiful. They reveal genuine respect. So take a moment to reflect. When family members contact you, what usually happens? Do they show interest in your life? Do they ask about your feelings? Do they make time for simple conversations? Or do most interactions revolve around what they need from you? Be honest with yourself. Because recognizing these patterns is not about becoming bitter. It is about understanding the reality of your relationships, and sometimes that understanding becomes the first step toward protecting your dignity and emotional well-being. Unfortunately, the next sign may be the most painful one yet, because it doesn't involve money. It doesn't involve favors. It involves something far more personal. It involves the way family members speak to you, and the words they choose can reveal far more than they realize. Of all the signs we've discussed so far, this one may be the most difficult to recognize. Not because it is rare, but because it often hides behind smiles, good intentions, and familiar faces. Many older adults experience it every day without fully realizing what is happening. The words sound harmless. The tone seems friendly. The conversation appears normal. Yet underneath it all is a message that cuts deeply. The message says, "We'll no longer see you as an equal." That message can appear when family members begin speaking to you as if you were a child. Not with kindness, not with patience, but with a subtle sense of superiority. I remember meeting a woman named Helen. Helen was 88 years old. She had raised 3 children. She had worked for decades. She had survived hardships that most people could never imagine. She had cared for sick parents, supported her husband through difficult times, and sacrificed countless personal dreams for her family. She was strong, wise, capable. Yet one afternoon she shared something that brought tears to her eyes. She said, "My children talk to me like I'm 5 years old." At first, I thought she might be exaggerating. Then she explained. Whenever she expressed an opinion, someone corrected her. Whenever she made a suggestion, someone laughed politely. Whenever she disagreed, someone responded with phrases like, "Now, Mom, let's not worry about that. Mom, you don't understand how things work today." "It's okay, Mom, we'll handle it." The words sounded gentle, but the message underneath was painful. The message was that her thoughts no longer mattered. Her experience no longer mattered. Her judgment no longer mattered. Over time, she stopped sharing her opinions altogether. Not because she had nothing to contribute, because she became tired of being treated like a child. Think about how painful that is. You spend 80 years learning life's lessons. You survive heartbreak. You overcome challenges. You gain wisdom through decades of experience. Then suddenly people begin speaking to you as if you know less than everyone else in the room. That hurts deeply. One of the greatest forms of respect is recognizing another person's dignity. Dignity means acknowledging their value, their intelligence, their life experience, their right to have thoughts and opinions. When family members start talking down to an elderly parent or grandparent, that dignity begins to erode, and it rarely happens overnight. The change is usually gradual. A son starts explaining simple things his father already understands. A daughter begins dismissing her mother's concerns without listening. A grandchild rolls their eyes when a grandparent shares advice. At first, these moments seem small, but over time, they accumulate, and eventually they create a painful pattern. A pattern that says, "You are no longer someone we learn from." Instead, the older person becomes someone people manage, someone people tolerate, someone people speak over rather than speak with. I once knew a retired teacher named George. George was 90 years old. For more than 40 years, he had educated thousands of students. People respected him. Parents trusted him. Communities admired him. One day, he attended a family dinner. During the meal, he shared an opinion about a current event. Before he could finish, one of his younger relatives laughed and said, "That's because you're from a different generation." The table laughed. The conversation moved on, but George sat quietly. Hours later, he told me something I will never forget. He said, "Apparently wisdom now has an expiration date." There was sadness in his voice. Not anger, sadness. Because he realized something. His family no longer evaluated his ideas based on their merit. They evaluated them based on his age. And that is a form of disrespect many older adults face. The assumption that age automatically makes someone less capable of understanding the world. Of course, times change, technology changes, culture changes, society changes, but human wisdom doesn't suddenly disappear because someone has gray hair. In fact, many of life's most valuable lessons come from years of experience, patience, resilience, character, integrity, forgiveness. These qualities are often strongest in those who have lived long enough to truly understand them. Yet modern society sometimes worships youth while overlooking wisdom. Unfortunately, families can fall into the same trap. Another common sign appears in the way people explain things. Have you ever noticed someone repeatedly explaining simple concepts to an older adult as though they couldn't possibly understand? Not helping, not teaching. Talking down, there is a difference, a huge difference. Helping comes from respect. Talking down comes from superiority. Helping says, "Let me assist you." Talking down says, "You probably can't understand this." One preserves dignity, the other damages it. I remember visiting a senior center where an elderly gentleman named Richard shared a story. His grandson had recently purchased a new television. During a family gathering, Richard asked a simple question about how it worked. Instead of answering respectfully, his grandson laughed and said, "Grandpa, this stuff is way too complicated for you." Everyone laughed. The moment passed quickly, but Richard remembered it. Not because of the television, because of what the comment implied. It implied that his age made him incapable, that he was somehow less intelligent, less competent, less worthy of being taken seriously. The truth is that many seniors aren't hurt by aging itself. They're hurt by how other people respond to aging. They're hurt when others assume weakness. They're hurt when others assume incompetence. They're hurt when others stop recognizing the person they have always been. Inside every elderly person lives the same individual who once worked hard, raised children, built careers, pursued dreams, and overcame obstacles. The years have changed the body, but the heart remains. The memories remain. The identity remains. The need for respect remains. That need never disappears. One of the saddest consequences of being treated like a child is self-doubt. Over time, even strong people begin questioning themselves. They become hesitant. They second-guess their decisions. They stop expressing opinions. They stop speaking up, not because they lack wisdom, because they have been taught that their wisdom is unwelcome. And that silence can be devastating. The world loses something valuable when older voices disappear. Families lose access to experience. Communities lose perspective. Younger generations lose lessons that cannot be found in books. Every elderly person carries a lifetime of stories, a lifetime of victories, a lifetime of mistakes and lessons learned. When those voices are dismissed, everyone loses. If you recognize this sign in your own family, please remember something important. You do not need to apologize for your age. You do not need to apologize for your experience. You do not need to shrink yourself to make others comfortable. Your thoughts matter. Your opinions matter. Your wisdom matters. The years you have lived have given you insights that younger generations have not yet had time to develop. Never forget that. Respect is not about always agreeing with someone. Families can disagree respectfully. Children can have different opinions than their parents. Grandchildren can see the world differently than their grandparents. That is normal. The issue is not disagreement. The issue is dignity. Respect allows disagreement without humiliation. Respect allows conversation without condescension. Respect allows different perspectives while still honoring the person speaking. When that dignity disappears, it often signals a deeper problem, a problem that deserves attention. As painful as this sign is, there is still one more warning sign we must discuss. And in many ways, it may be the most heartbreaking of all, because it involves something no human being should ever feel from the people they love most. The feeling of being invisible. If you followed this journey from the beginning, you've probably noticed something. Each sign we've discussed has been painful. Being interrupted, being excluded from important decisions, being contacted only when someone needs something, being spoken to like a child. Each one leaves a wound. But there is one sign that often hurts more than all the others combined, because it touches the deepest part of the human heart, the desire to matter, the desire to belong, the desire to be seen. And when that desire goes unmet, a person can feel profoundly alone, even in a crowded room, even at a family gathering, even surrounded by the people they love most. That final sign is this: you feel invisible, not physically invisible, emotionally invisible. Your presence is noticed, but your importance is not. Your chair is there. Your name is remembered. Your birthday may even be celebrated. Yet somehow deep inside, you feel as though nobody truly sees you anymore. I know a man named Samuel. Samuel was 89 years old, a kind, gentle man with a warm smile and a lifetime of stories. He loved his family deeply. Every holiday he attended family gatherings. Every birthday, every reunion, every special occasion. From the outside, anyone watching would assume he was surrounded by love, and in many ways he was. But one afternoon Samuel shared something that broke my heart. He said, "I've never felt lonelier than I do when I'm sitting in a room full of my own family." I sat quietly. Then I asked why. His answer was simple. "No one notices when I'm there." At first, those words sounded impossible. Of course they noticed him. He was physically present. People greeted him. People smiled. People hugged him. But then he explained. During family gatherings, conversations happened around him rather than with him. Decisions were discussed without his involvement. Stories were shared without asking for his perspective. Hours passed without anyone truly engaging him. He wasn't excluded intentionally. He was simply overlooked. And over time, being overlooked felt exactly like being invisible. That feeling is more common than many people realize. The modern world moves quickly. Phones ring. Notifications appear. Schedules overflow. Everyone seems busy. Everyone seems distracted. Unfortunately, older family members often become casualties of that distraction. Not because they aren't loved, because they are no longer the center of attention. Years ago, families often gathered around grandparents to hear stories. Children listened. Adults asked questions. Wisdom flowed naturally between generations. Today, many gatherings look different. Televisions are on, phones are out, conversations happen rapidly. Attention spans are shorter, and the quiet elderly person sitting in the corner often disappears into the background. Not physically. Emotionally. One of the saddest stories I ever heard came from a woman named Rose. Rose was 90 years old. Every Sunday, her family gathered for dinner. Children ran through the house. Grandchildren laughed. Everyone talked. The room was filled with life. Yet Rose confessed something heartbreaking. She said, "Sometimes I wonder if I stayed home, how long it would take them to notice." Imagine carrying that thought. Imagine sitting among the people you love and wondering whether your absence would even be felt. That isn't loneliness caused by isolation. That is loneliness caused by invisibility. And in many ways, it can hurt even more. Because when you're alone, at least you understand why you feel lonely. But when you're surrounded by family and still feel lonely, the pain becomes much harder to explain. You begin questioning yourself. Maybe I'm too quiet. Maybe I'm not interesting anymore. Maybe nobody cares what I think. Maybe my time is past. These thoughts creep into the mind slowly, and the longer they stay there, the more damage they do. The truth is that every human being needs acknowledgement. We need to know our lives matter. We need to know our presence matters. We need to know that if we walked into a room, someone would genuinely be happy to see us. That need doesn't disappear with age. If anything, it becomes stronger. Because older adults have already experienced many losses. They may have lost friends. They may have lost spouses. They may have lost siblings. They may have lost neighbors and lifelong companions. As those losses accumulate, family often becomes their primary source of connection, which is why feeling invisible within the family can be so devastating. I remember visiting a retirement community several years ago. During one visit, I met an elderly woman who shared a powerful observation. She said, "People stop asking old people questions." I asked what she meant. She smiled sadly. "When you're young, everyone asks about your dreams. When you're middle-aged, everyone asks about your work. When you're old, many people stop asking anything at all." Her words stayed with me because they revealed a painful truth. Many seniors are not suffering from a lack of wisdom. They are suffering from a lack of engagement. Nobody asks what they think. Nobody asks what they've learned. Nobody asks about their memories. Nobody asks what they still hope for. Slowly, they begin feeling invisible. Yet every older person carries an extraordinary treasure. A lifetime of experience. A lifetime of stories. A lifetime of lessons. Imagine all the things an 89-year-old person has seen. The changes, the triumphs, the mistakes, the heartbreaks, the victories. The wisdom earned through decades of living. That knowledge is priceless. But it only benefits others when someone takes the time to listen. One conversation can change everything. One sincere question can remind someone that they still matter. One moment of genuine attention can restore dignity that has been fading for years. That's why respect isn't measured only by grand gestures. It's measured by small moments, listening, including, asking, remembering, valuing, noticing. The people who feel respected are not necessarily the people who receive the most gifts. They are the people who feel seen. Seen for who they are. Seen for what they have contributed. Seen for the life they have lived. Seen for the person they still are today. As I approach the final chapters of life, I have learned something important. Every human being wants to leave this world knowing they mattered. Not because they were famous. Not because they were wealthy. Not because they were powerful. Because they were loved. Because they were appreciated. Because their presence made a difference. When family members stop showing that appreciation, the pain can be profound. But there is something equally important to remember. Your value does not disappear simply because someone fails to recognize it. Your worth does not depend on another person's attention. Your dignity does not require another person's approval. You have value because of the life you have lived. because of the sacrifices you made, because of the love you gave, because of the battles you survived, because of the wisdom you earned. No one can take that away from you. Not even a family that sometimes forgets to show the respect you deserve. So if you recognize these 5 signs in your own life, don't respond with bitterness. Respond with awareness. Recognize what is happening. Protect your dignity. Protect your peace. And never forget who you are. You are not invisible. You are not irrelevant. You are not a burden. You are a person whose life has meaning. A person whose story matters. A person worthy of respect. And sometimes the most important thing you can do is remind yourself of that truth every single day. Because after 89 years of life, I've learned one final lesson. The people who respect themselves teach others how to respect them. And that lesson may be the most valuable one of all.